The old upright piano sat in the corner of Maylene's apartment, its dark wood finish catching the afternoon light that filtered through thin curtains. Her fingers hovered over the keys but didn't press down. Not yet. Taking a deep breath, she dropped her hands to her lap and turned away. At 32, Maylene lived a quiet life that few would connect to the child who once dazzled audiences across 3 continents. These days, she taught piano at the Sun Valley Community Center, helping children and adults fumble through basic scales and simple tunes. She preferred it that way. No spotlight, no critics, and absolutely no pressure. The phone rang, interrupting her thoughts. She rarely received calls these days, having deliberately shrunk her social circle to a handful of casual acquaintances. None of them would call at this hour. With hesitation, she answered, "Maylene, is that you?" The voice sent a jolt through her body. Professor Richard Abernathy, her old mentor. The man who had discovered her playing at a local competition when she was just 6 years old. The man who had guided her career until... "How did you get this number?" she asked, her voice sharper than intended. A pause on the other end. "Your mother gave it to me, of course." Her mother still held out hope that May would return to the concert stage someday, despite all evidence that those days were long gone, despite what happened at Carnegie Hall 10 years ago. "What do you want, Professor?" "I wouldn't call if it wasn't important," he said. His voice had aged, carrying more gravel than she remembered. "There's a charity event next month, for the children's ward at Memorial Hospital." Maylene closed her eyes. She knew where this was heading and was already forming her refusal when he continued. "I'm not asking you to perform Rachmaninoff or Liszt, just a simple tune, 5 minutes of your time." "I don't perform anymore," she said flatly. "You know that." "I do know," he said quietly. "But these kids, they're fighting battles much harder than stage fright." The words stung, but she recognized the manipulation for what it was. "I'm sorry, Professor. I can recommend several talented students who would be honored to—" "I have their pictures here," he interrupted. "The children the fundraiser will help. I can send them to you." That won't change my mind, but even as she said it, her email notification pinged. With one hand still holding the phone, she opened the message and froze. A dozen faces looked back at her from the hospital ward. Young boys and girls with thin faces and bright eyes that seemed to hold both innocence and ancient wisdom. Some had colorful scarves wrapped around bald heads. Others sat with IV poles beside their beds. But all of them were smiling, and one girl in particular caught May's attention, dark eyes serious beneath a colorful headscarf, hands resting on a small keyboard in her lap. Something in her expression reminded May of herself at that age, determined, intense, lost in the world of music. "Her name is Lily," the professor said, as if reading May's mind. "She started piano lessons after her diagnosis. Her teacher says she has a gift." May swallowed hard. "I don't see how my playing would help these children." "Music heals in ways medicine cannot," he replied. "You know this better than most," and she did know. Before the pressure and expectations had crushed her love for performance, music had been her refuge. As a child of immigrants who worked long hours in their small restaurant, she'd often been alone. The piano became her friend, her confidant, her voice. "What's the piece?" she asked, not quite believing she was even considering it. "That's the thing," he said, and she could hear the cautious hope in his voice. "It's not classical at all. It's a folk melody. Something simple, something pure." "Which one?" "The one your grandmother taught you. The lullaby from her village." May's throat tightened. How did he even know about that? She had played it for him only once during a lesson when she was perhaps 8 years old. He had asked her to show him something that wasn't in the standard repertoire, something personal. "How do you remember that?" A soft chuckle came through the phone. "Some music stays with you." "That melody has stayed with me for over 20 years. Her grandmother had been gone for almost as long. The old woman who had crossed oceans with nothing but her memories and determination to see her children and grandchildren thrive in a new land. Who had hummed that melody while cooking in their tiny kitchen. Who had guided May's small fingers over piano keys before she could even reach the pedals. "I don't know, Professor," she said, her resolve weakening. "I haven't performed in public since—" "I know," he said gently. "I was there, remember?" As if she could forget. The Carnegie Hall disaster that had ended her career played in her nightmares with perfect clarity. The missed entry after the cadenza. The cascade of wrong notes that followed as panic set in. The murmurs from the audience. And finally, The terrible silence when she froze completely, unable to continue. She had walked off stage and never returned. This wouldn't be Carnegie Hall, he continued. Just the community auditorium. Small crowd, and you wouldn't even be announced as Mei Lin, the former prodigy. Just as a local piano teacher, if you prefer. She walked to her window, looking out at the quiet street below. A mother walked hand in hand with a small child. An old man sat on a bench feeding pigeons. Normal people living normal lives without the weight of failed expectations. Why me? She asked finally. There are plenty of pianists who could play this tune. Because you'll play it with heart, he said simply. And because I think you need this as much as those children do. She almost laughed at that. What could she possibly need from performing again? But deep down in a place she rarely acknowledged, she knew he might be right. The piano in her apartment was more ornament than instrument these days. She taught others to play but rarely played for herself anymore. Something vital had gone missing from her life when she walked off that stage 10 years ago. Let me think about it, she said finally. That's all I ask, he replied, not pushing further. The event is 4 weeks from Saturday. You have time to decide. After hanging up, Mei returned to the piano. This time her fingers found the keys and pressed down gently. The melody came back to her without effort, the simple folk tune her grandmother had carried across oceans and decades. She played it softly at first, then with growing confidence as muscle memory took over. For the first time in years, she felt something stir inside her chest, not fear or anxiety, but a faint echo of what had drawn her to music in the first place. Before competitions and critics, before pressure and expectations, there had been just this, the joy of bringing a melody to life. That night, Mei dreamed of her grandmother. Not as she had been in her final days, frail and confused in a hospital bed, but as the strong woman who had told stories about the old country while showing Mei how to make dumplings, her hands deftly folding the delicate dough. In the dream, her grandmother hummed the lullaby, nodding encouragingly as she had when Mei was learning to play. The next morning, Mei called Professor Abernathy back. I'll do it, she said before he could even say hello, but with conditions. I play anonymously. No program listing of my name or background. Just local teacher like you suggested. Agreed, he said, not bothering to hide his delight. And I'll need the auditorium for practice when it's empty. To get comfortable with the space, might I'll arrange it. One more thing, Mei added. I want to meet the children. Before the performance, not as a pianist, just as a visitor. There was a pause before he answered. That can be arranged too. Though I'm curious, why? Mei thought about the serious-eyed girl with the keyboard on her lap, about her grandmother's lullaby and the healing power of music that had once meant everything to her. Because I need to remember who I'm playing for, she said quietly, and it's not for the audience. As she hung up the phone, Mei felt equal measures of terror and something she hadn't experienced in a very long time, purpose. She walked to the piano and began to play the lullaby again, this time allowing herself to remember the words her grandmother had sung. Sleep, my child. Rest your head, dreams will find your little bed through the night. I'll watch and pray until the sun brings a new day. Simple words. Simple melody. Nothing like the complex pieces she had once performed on the world's greatest stages. But somehow, it felt more important than any of those performances had been. Maybe, just maybe, she could do this after all. Mei Lin parked her car in the hospital's visitor lot, her hands gripping the steering wheel long after she'd turned off the engine. The children's ward was on the 3rd floor. She had called ahead, and a nurse named Gloria would be waiting to escort her. Still, she sat frozen, wondering if she should just drive away. This isn't about you, she whispered to herself. The words of her grandmother, spoken whenever Mei had gotten nervous before childhood recitals. Not about impressing judges or critics or even proud parents. About the music itself and the gift of sharing it. Taking a deep breath, she grabbed the small bag from the passenger seat and made her way inside. The hospital smell hit her. Immediately, that mix of antiseptic and floor cleaner that couldn't quite mask the underlying scent of sickness. Mei had always hated hospitals. Her last memory of her grandmother was in a place like this. Machines beeping, tubes everywhere. The strong woman reduced to a frail shell. At the reception desk, she gave her name and purpose. I'm here to visit the children's oncology ward. Nurse Gloria is expecting me. The receptionist smiled warmly. Of course. The kids have been looking forward to your visit. That surprised May. They have? Professor Abernathy told them a special music teacher was coming. The woman leaned forward and lowered her voice. We don't tell them, but we don't get many visitors here who aren't family or medical staff. It's a bright spot in their routine. Guilt twisted in May's stomach. She had almost backed out 3 times this week alone. The elevator ride to the 3rd floor gave her time to gather her thoughts. When the doors opened, a sturdy woman with salt and pepper hair pulled into a tight bun stood waiting. May Lynn? She asked, extending a hand. I'm Gloria. Thank you for coming. May shook her hand. I'm not sure what to expect. Gloria's smile was gentle but practical. They're just kids. Sick kids, yes, but still kids. Some are having good days, some bad. Some might be too tired to engage much, others will talk your ear off. Just be yourself. As they walked down the corridor, Gloria gave her a quick briefing. We've got 8 children in the ward right now, ages 6 to 14. Various types of cancer, various stages of treatment. Some have been here for months, others come and go for treatments. And Lily? May asked before she could stop herself. The serious-eyed girl from the photo had been on her mind all week. Gloria's eyebrows rose slightly. You know about Lily? Professor Abernathy mentioned her. Said she plays piano. Ah, yes. She's one of our long-term patients. Leukemia. She's responding well to treatment, but it's a long road. Gloria paused outside double doors with colorful cartoon characters painted on them. She'll be thrilled to meet another pianist. Music has been her lifeline through all this. The children's ward was brighter than May had expected. Walls painted with murals of forests and oceans, a small play area with books and toys, individual rooms along the perimeter, most with doors open, and a central nurses' station where 2 staff members worked on computers. A few children sat at a table doing crafts with a volunteer. One boy was in a wheelchair near the window looking out, and in the corner, a small upright piano, much like the one in May's apartment, though clearly well used with chipped keys and scuff marks on its legs. Everyone, Gloria called out. We have a special visitor today. This is Ms. May, a piano teacher who's come to spend some time with us. May felt herself flush as several small faces turned toward her. She hadn't prepared anything to say. Hadn't really thought beyond just showing up. A small voice broke the awkward silence. Do you know Baby Shark? It came from a tiny girl with a bright pink headscarf, her question so unexpected that May couldn't help but laugh. I do, actually, she admitted, though I usually teach my students Bach and Mozart. The girl looked unimpressed. Baby Shark is better. Another child, a boy who couldn't have been more than 7, piped up. Can you play something for us? Right now? May hesitated. She hadn't planned to play today. This visit was supposed to be about meeting the children, understanding who she'd be performing for at the charity event, but looking at their expectant faces, she found herself nodding. Sure. Something short. As she made her way to the piano, she noticed a girl watching intently from one of the rooms, dark, serious eyes. Lily. She sat cross-legged on her bed, an IV line running to her arm, a small electronic keyboard indeed resting on her lap. May sat at the upright, surprised to find it in decent tune despite its worn appearance. Her fingers found the keys, and without overthinking it, she began to play Debussy's Clair de Lune. Not the whole piece, just the opening minute or so. The gentle notes filled the ward, and she was aware of movement as more children appeared in doorways or wheeled closer. When she finished, there was a moment of silence before the pink headscarf girl declared, "That wasn't Baby Shark." The children laughed, and May found herself smiling too. You're right. How about this? And she launched into an exaggerated, dramatic version of Baby Shark that had the kids giggling. After that, the ice was broken. For the next hour, May moved around the ward, talking with each child. They showed her art projects and favorite toys. They told her about their homes and schools and what they missed most about normal life. Some were shy, others chattered nonstop. One boy proudly showed her his bravery beads, a long string with a different colored bead for each treatment and procedure he'd endured. Finally, May made her way to Lily's room. The girl was still on her bed, watching everything from a distance. Hi, May said, stopping at the doorway. I'm May. I heard you play piano too. Lily nodded solemnly. A little. Not like you. May I come in? Another nod. May sat in the visitor's chair beside the bed. Up close, she could see how thin Lily was, how her hospital gown hung loosely on her small frame. but her eyes were clear and focused. "How long have you been playing?" May asked. "Since I got sick. 9 months ago." Lily gestured to the small keyboard. "My mom got me this. My teacher comes on Tuesdays. Do you like it? Playing piano?" Lily seemed to consider this carefully. "Yes, when I play I forget I'm sick. Just for a little while." The simple truth of it hit May hard. Wasn't that why she had played too all those years ago? Before competitions and critics and pressure. Playing had been her escape, her joy, her safe place. "Would you play something for me?" May asked. Lily looked uncertain. "You're a real pianist." "I only know easy songs." "I'm just a teacher now," May said. "And everyone starts with easy songs." After a moment, Lily positioned her keyboard and carefully played a simple melody, the beginning of Beethoven's Für Elise. Just the famous opening theme, played slowly but with surprising care for dynamics. "That's really good," May said, meaning it. "Your teacher has taught you well." "I'm learning a new song too," Lily said, a hint of pride creeping into her voice. "Want to hear?" "I'd love to." This time, Lily played a melody May didn't recognize. It was simple, childlike, but had an unexpected poignancy to it. The notes formed a wistful tune that somehow managed to be both sad and hopeful at once. "That's beautiful," May said when Lily finished. "What's it called?" "It doesn't have a name yet." "I made it up." May blinked in surprise. "You composed this yourself?" Lily nodded. "When I can't sleep, I try different notes until they sound right together." "That's exactly how composing works," May said, genuinely impressed. "You have a gift." For the first time, Lily smiled, a small, shy curving of lips. "My teacher says music is like magic. It can make people feel things without words." "Your teacher is very wise," May said softly. They talked about music for a while longer. Lily asked questions about how to write down her compositions, and May promised to bring some blank music paper on her next visit. It wasn't until Gloria appeared at the door that May realized she'd been at the hospital for nearly 2 hours. "I have to go," she told Lily reluctantly, "but I'll come back soon, and I'll be playing at a special concert to help raise money for this ward." "What will you play?" Lily asked. May thought about the folk tune her grandmother had taught her, the piece Professor Abernathy had requested. "A song my grandmother sang to me when I was little. Is it pretty?" "Yes," May said. "It's pretty. Simple but pretty." As May drove home, the children's faces stayed with her, especially Lily's. The way her eyes had lit up when talking about music. The pride in her voice when playing her own composition. The escape that music provided from pain and fear and endless medical procedures. May had been avoiding practice for the charity performance, still ambivalent about returning to any kind of stage. But that evening, she sat at her piano with new purpose. She played her grandmother's lullaby again and again, each time trying to infuse it with something beyond mere notes. The simple melody took on new meaning now. It wasn't just a remnant of her past, a connection to her grandmother. It was becoming a bridge to these children, to Lily, who understood instinctively what May had forgotten, that music's power lay not in technical perfection, but in its ability to speak directly to the heart. For the first time in years, May found herself looking forward to a performance, not with dread or anxiety, but with a quiet determination to give these children something more valuable than virtuosity. She would give them truth. 2 weeks before the charity concert, Maylin found herself sitting in the empty auditorium, staring at the grand piano on stage. Professor Abernathy had arranged for her to practice here as promised. The space was much smaller than Carnegie Hall, but to May, any stage felt intimidating now. "It's just a room," she whispered to herself. "Just a piano." She climbed the steps to the stage and ran her fingers over the polished black surface of the grand piano. This wasn't her upright at home, with its familiar touch and sound. This was a concert instrument built for projection and clarity. Taking a seat at the bench, May placed her hands on the keys but didn't press down. The memory of her last performance came rushing back, the missed notes, the growing panic, the terrible silence as she froze completely. Her hands began to tremble. "Stop it," she told herself firmly. This is different, and it was different. She wasn't playing Chopin's Ballade No. 1, the piece that had defeated her a decade ago. She was playing a simple folk melody that lived in her bones. She wasn't trying to impress critics or launch a career. She was playing for sick children who needed something beautiful in their lives. She was playing for Lily. May had visited the hospital twice more since her first trip. Each time she spent a little time with all the children but found herself drawn to Lily's room. They talked about music and May brought staff paper so Lily could write down her compositions. The girl was working on a new piece now, though she kept it secret, saying it wasn't ready for anyone to hear yet. Taking a deep breath, May began to play her grandmother's lullaby. The notes echoed in the empty auditorium, sounding somehow smaller than she expected. She played it again, this time allowing her fingers to add subtle embellishments. A gentle trill here, a richer harmony there. The third time she closed her eyes and imagined her grandmother singing the words. Her voice soft but clear. That's lovely. May jumped at the voice, her hands crashing down on the keys in a discordant surprise. Professor Abernathy stood in the aisle looking apologetic. I'm sorry, he said quickly. I didn't mean to startle you. She took a moment to calm her racing heart. How long have you been standing there? Just a few minutes. He walked toward the stage. You were playing beautifully. May shook her head. It's just a simple tune. The simple things are often the hardest to play well. He climbed the steps and stood beside the piano. May I make an observation? 10 years ago, May would have nodded eagerly, hungry for his guidance. Now she felt a flicker of defensiveness but nodded anyway. You're holding back, he said gently, playing it correctly, even adding some nice touches. But you're not fully in it yet. It's been a while, she said, hearing the stiffness in her voice. Professor Abernathy studied her for a moment. Why did you agree to do this, May? The question caught her off guard. Because you asked. Because of the children and, she looked away, and nothing. He sat down in a chair near the piano, settling in as if they had all the time in the world. May recognized this technique from her lessons, his patient silence that would stretch until she filled it with truth. Finally, she sighed. And maybe I miss it sometimes, playing, sharing music with people. He nodded, unsurprised. Music was never just a career for you. It was your voice. Until I lost it. You didn't lose it, he corrected. You buried it. After what happened at Carnegie. May felt a flash of the old pain and humiliation. I embarrassed myself. I embarrassed you. Me? He looked genuinely startled. Is that what you think? You were my teacher, my mentor. You staked your reputation on me and I failed. Professor Abernathy leaned forward, his eyes intense. May, I never cared about my reputation. I cared about you. What happened that night, it broke my heart because I knew how it would affect you. Not because of what anyone would think of me. She wanted to believe him. But a decade of shame was hard to overcome. I've had many talented students, he continued, but few with your gift for making people feel something when you play. That night at Carnegie, you were playing perfectly until the mistake. Technically brilliant. But do you know what was missing? May shook her head. You, the real you. You were so focused on playing it perfectly that you forgot to play it truthfully. His words hit her with unexpected force. She had spent years thinking her failure was about technique, about nerves. But what if it was about something deeper? The children at the hospital, May said slowly. They don't care about perfect performances. When I played Baby Shark for them, they laughed and clapped like it was the best thing they'd ever heard. Professor Abernathy smiled. Exactly. And when you play this lullaby at the charity concert, they won't care if you add a wrong note or miss a beat. They'll care if you mean it, he stood up. I'll leave you to practice. Just remember, play it like you're playing it for one child, not an audience. After he left, May sat quietly, thinking about his words. She had been approaching this performance as a return to the stage, fraught with all the pressure and expectations that came with it. But what if she approached it differently? Not as a performance at all, but as a gift. A musical letter to Lily and the other children. She began to play again, but this time she didn't think about technique or even the specific notes. She thought about her grandmother's hands, gnarled with age but still elegant on piano keys. She thought about the look on Lily's face when playing her own composition, absorbed, transported, briefly free from pain and fear. The melody flowed differently now. Not better in a technical sense, but more honest somehow. By the time she finished, May realized her cheeks were wet with tears. The next week passed in a blur of preparation. May continued to visit the hospital, bringing music books for Lily and playing short pieces for all the children. She practiced her grandmother's lullaby daily, not to perfect it, but to deepen her connection to it. 3 days before the concert, Nurse Gloria called her. "Lily's asking for you," she said, her voice tight. "She's had a rough few days with her treatment. It would mean a lot if you could visit." May canceled her afternoon lessons and drove straight to the hospital. She found Lily curled up in her bed, looking smaller and paler than before. The sight made May's heart clench. "Hey there," May said softly from the doorway. Lily turned, her eyes brightening slightly despite her obvious exhaustion. "You came?" "Of course I did." May sat in the chair beside the bed. "Gloria said you're having a tough time." Lily nodded, too tired for pretense. "The medicine makes me sick, but they say it's killing the bad cells too, so I have to take it." "You're very brave." A small shrug. "Not really. I get scared a lot." "Being brave doesn't mean you never get scared," May said. "It means you keep going even when you are scared." They sat quietly for a while, Lily too tired for their usual conversations about music. Finally, she reached for a folder on her bedside table. "I finished it," she said. "My new song. I was going to play it for you, but I'm too tired today." She handed the folder to May, who opened it to find several pages of staff paper covered with carefully written notes. The handwriting was clearly a child's, with some erasures and corrections, but the notation itself was remarkably precise for someone who had only been learning music for less than a year. "Your composition?" May asked, touched that Lily would share it. Lily nodded. "It's called After the Rain. I was looking out the window one day after it rained, and everything looked clean and shiny, even the parking lot. And I thought that's how I want to feel when all this is over." May scanned the music, humming bits of it softly. The melody was simple but had an unexpected depth to it, moving between minor and major keys in a way that created tension and then release. For a child with minimal training, it showed remarkable intuition. "This is beautiful, Lily," she said sincerely. "Would you like me to play it for you now since you're tired? You can read it just by looking." "That's what all those years of practice were for," May smiled. "Your teacher must be very proud of you." Lily's face fell slightly. "I haven't seen her for 2 weeks. She had a baby, so she's not coming anymore." "I see." May hesitated, then offered, "Would you like me to come instead? Not to replace your teacher, but just until she comes back?" The hope that flashed across Lily's face was answer enough. "Really, you would do that?" "Once a week," May nodded. "We can work on your compositions together." For the first time that day, Lily smiled fully. "Yes, please." May moved to the small keyboard that sat on the windowsill in Lily's room. "Now let me play your piece for you." As May played After the Rain, she was struck by how the music seemed to tell Lily's story. The struggle, the moments of darkness, but always with an undercurrent of hope. When she finished, she turned to find Lily watching her intently. "You played it just how I heard it in my head," the girl whispered. "It's a gift to be able to write music that speaks so clearly," May told her. "You have something special, Lily." Before leaving, May sat with Lily until she fell asleep, her small face finally peaceful in rest. In that quiet hospital room, watching the steady rise and fall of the child's chest, May felt something settle within herself, a certainty about the upcoming performance that had been missing before. She knew now what Professor Abernathy had meant about playing truthfully rather than perfectly, and she knew exactly who she would be playing for when she took the stage. The day of the charity concert arrived with unexpected sunshine after a week of rain. Maylin stood at her apartment window, watching people hurry along the sidewalk below, going about their Saturday routines. For them, it was just an ordinary day. For her, it felt like standing on the edge of a cliff. Her phone buzzed with a text from Professor Abernathy. "Just checking in." "How are you feeling?" She typed back, "Nervous, but okay." "See you at 5, that was an understatement." Her stomach had been in knots since she woke up, and she'd barely touched the toast she'd made for breakfast. But unlike the paralyzing fear she had experienced before her Carnegie Hall performance, this nervousness felt different, more like anticipation than dread. May moved to her piano and played her grandmother's lullaby one last time in the comfort of her apartment. Her fingers knew the melody by heart now, every nuance and subtle change in dynamics. But today she added something new, a short introduction based on the main theme of Lily's After the Rain. A musical acknowledgement, a bridge between her past and this moment. The hours passed both too quickly and too slowly. May tried to occupy herself with normal tasks. Laundry, answering emails from students' parents, organizing her music books. But her mind kept returning to the evening ahead. At 3 o'clock, she began getting ready. She had thought carefully about what to wear, wanting to look appropriate for a charity event but not too formal. She settled on a simple blue dress, her grandmother's favorite color, and a small pearl pendant that had been a gift when she graduated from music school. As she fastened the necklace, she caught her reflection in the mirror. 10 years had passed since she walked off that New York stage. The face that looked back at her now was older, with fine lines at the corners of her eyes. But there was something else too, a steadiness that hadn't been there before. The eyes that had once been filled with fear and shame now held purpose. "Play it truthfully," she told her reflection, echoing Professor Abernathy's words. The drive to the auditorium took 15 minutes. May arrived early as planned, wanting time to settle her nerves before people started arriving. As she pulled into the parking lot, she noticed a familiar van with the hospital logo. They were bringing some of the children who were well enough to attend. Inside, the backstage area was busy with volunteers setting up for the reception that would follow the concert. Professor Abernathy spotted her immediately and came over. "There you are," he said warmly. "Everything's ready. You're playing fourth in the program, just before intermission." May nodded, trying to focus on his words through the buzzing in her ears. "Is Lily here?" "Yes, some of the children just arrived. They're being seated in the front row." "Can I see her before the show?" He checked his watch. "We have about 20 minutes before people start arriving." "Come on." They made their way through side corridors to reach the auditorium. The space that had been empty during May's practice sessions was now being transformed. Volunteers arranged flowers on the stage. A technician tested the microphones and lighting. And in the front row, a small group of children in wheelchairs and with IV poles were being settled by nurses and parents. May spotted Lily immediately. The girl was in a wheelchair today, looking fragile but alert, her dark eyes taking in everything. She wore a blue headscarf that happened to match May's dress and had a small drawing pad on her lap. When Lily saw May approaching, her face lit up. "You're really here. I told everyone my piano teacher is playing tonight." "I wouldn't miss it," May said, kneeling beside the wheelchair. "I'm so glad you could come." "Mom said I had to rest all morning so I'd have enough energy," Lily said proudly. "And look, we match." She pointed to her headscarf and May's dress. "We do," May smiled. "It must be good luck." Lily lowered her voice to a whisper. "Are you scared?" "I get scared sometimes when I have to play for my doctor and nurses." May considered this. "A little nervous," she admitted. "But it helps to remember who I'm playing for." "The people who are giving money to help our hospital?" "Well, yes," May said, "but mostly for you and your friends. And for my grandmother, who taught me the song even though she can't be here to hear it." Lily nodded with surprising understanding. "Like how I play for my dad sometimes even though he's far away on his ship." "Exactly like that." A gentle hand on May's shoulder. "Professor Abernathy." "It's time, May. People are starting to arrive." She squeezed Lily's hand. "I'll see you after, okay?" The next hour passed in a blur. May waited in the green room, listening as the auditorium filled with voices. She paced, stretched her fingers, and tried to control her breathing. Other performers came and went. A string quartet, a young violinist, a tenor singing opera arias. Each performance was met with enthusiastic applause that she could hear through the walls. "Ms. May," a volunteer appeared at the door. "You're up next." The walk to the side of the stage felt like walking through water. Everything slowed down and required extra effort. May could see the audience now, much larger than she had expected. The auditorium was nearly full. Hospital staff in the back rows, community members who had purchased tickets, doctors in suits instead of white coats, and in the front row the children, Lily at the center. Professor Abernathy stepped to the microphone. "Our next performer is a local piano teacher who has generously volunteered her time not only for tonight's concert, but also working with the children in our oncology ward. She'll be playing a traditional folk melody. Please welcome May Lin." A ripple of surprise went through the audience at the mention of her full name. Some of the older attendees clearly recognized it from her days as a prodigy. May felt a moment of panic. This wasn't what they had agreed. She was supposed to be anonymous, just a local teacher. But then she caught Lily's eye in the front row. The girl was beaming with pride, clearly thrilled that her teacher was being properly acknowledged. And somehow that simple joy cut through May's fear. She walked to the piano and took a seat, adjusting the bench slightly. The stage lights were warm on her face. She could see the first few rows clearly. Lily and the other children watching with open curiosity. Hospital staff who had become familiar faces during her visits. Professor Abernathy standing at the side with an encouraging smile. May placed her hands on the keys and closed her eyes for just a moment. In her mind, she was no longer on a stage but sitting beside her grandmother in their small living room. She could almost smell the jasmine tea and almond cookies that had always accompanied their music sessions. She began to play the introduction she had created that morning, the echo of Lily's After the Rain melody establishing a foundation of quiet strength. Then she transitioned into her grandmother's lullaby, the notes rising and falling like gentle breaths. As she played, something unexpected happened. The fear and self-consciousness that had always accompanied her performances simply dissolved. Instead, she felt a connection to her grandmother's memory, to Lily's brave spirit, to every person in the audience who had come to support children fighting impossible battles. The melody took on a life of its own. May added harmonies that hadn't been part of her practice sessions, allowing the music to breathe and grow naturally. A phrase that had been gentle became momentarily fierce with maternal protection. Another that had been wistful opened into unexpected hope. She wasn't just playing notes from a folk song anymore. She was telling a story about love that crosses generations, about finding beauty in the midst of suffering, about the courage of small hearts facing enormous challenges. When she reached the final phrases, May opened her eyes and looked directly at Lily. The girl was leaning forward in her wheelchair, utterly still, tears streaming silently down her face, but she was smiling, a smile of recognition, as if May had somehow played the exact feelings Lily carried in her own heart but couldn't express. The final note faded into silence. For a heartbeat, no one moved or made a sound. May remained still, hands resting lightly on the keys, the echo of the music still vibrating in the air around them. Then Lily raised her small hands and began to clap. The other children joined her, then the parents and nurses, and finally the entire audience rose to their feet in a wave of sound that washed over May like a warm tide. She stood and bowed, her eyes blurring with tears. Not tears of relief or even happiness exactly, but of connection, of having finally found again what music was meant to be all along. As she left the stage, Professor Abernathy was waiting. He didn't speak, just opened his arms, and May stepped into a brief, tight hug. "That wasn't the lullaby I remember," he said when they separated. "No," she agreed. "It became something else." "It became yours," he corrected gently. Finally, before she could respond, a small crowd gathered around them, parents of the hospital children, doctors, community members. They thanked her, praised her playing, asked if she taught adult students, wondered if she would perform again soon. May answered politely but kept glancing toward the front row, where Lily sat watching everything with those serious eyes. As soon as there was a break in the conversations, May excused herself and made her way to the girl's side. "What did you think?" she asked, kneeling beside the wheelchair. Lily considered the question with her usual care. "I think," she said finally, "that's how my song would sound if I knew how to play like you." It was the highest praise May could imagine. 6 months after the charity concert, Maylin stood in the hallway of the children's hospital, a small wrapped package tucked under her arm. The corridors were familiar to her now. She knew which nurse would be at the station during the afternoon shift, which room had the best natural light for reading, and which vending machine was most likely to eat your dollar without giving you a snack in return. She waved to Dr. Chen, who was updating charts at the nurse's station. "Is she ready for visitors?" "She's been asking for you all morning," the doctor smiled. "The procedure went well. She's tired but alert." May nodded, relief washing through her. Lily had undergone her final scheduled treatment yesterday, a milestone that the entire ward had been anticipating. If all went as hoped, she would be able to go home next week, returning only for checkups rather than as an inpatient. "Room's been moved," Dr. Chen added. "She's in 302 now. Private room as a graduation present." May made her way down the hall, her steps lighter than they had been in months. The changes since the charity concert had been gradual but profound, both for Lily and for May herself. The concert had raised more money than expected, enough to fund new equipment for the children's ward and a music therapy program that May now ran 2 afternoons a week. She had cut back on her private lessons to make time for hospital visits, finding unexpected fulfillment in helping sick children discover the healing power of music. As for her own relationship with music, something had shifted that night on stage. The paralyzing fear that had ended her performance career was gone, replaced by a quieter confidence. She wasn't interested in returning to concert halls or competitions, but she had performed at 3 more charity events since then, each time playing with the same authenticity she had discovered that first night. May knocked softly on the door of room 302. "Come in," called a voice that was noticeably stronger than it had been 6 months. Lily sat propped up in bed, her dark hair, once lost to chemotherapy, now growing back in a short, glossy cap that framed her face. She still looked thin, but there was color in her cheeks and a brightness in her eyes that spoke of returning health. "There's my favorite teacher," Lily smiled, putting aside the book she had been reading. "There's my favorite composer," May replied, their usual greeting. "How are you feeling?" "Tired. But good tired, like after swimming, not sick tired." May placed the wrapped package on the bedside table and pulled up a chair. "Dr. Chen said everything went well yesterday," Lily nodded. "They said if my numbers stay good, I can go home on Tuesday. Mom's getting my room ready. She bought new curtains and everything." "That's wonderful news." May squeezed the girl's hand. "I brought you something to celebrate." Lily eyed the package. "Is it sheet music?" "You always give me sheet music." "Not this time." "Open it." Lily carefully unwrapped the package, taking her time with the tape and folding the paper neatly, a habit she developed during long hospital days when any activity needed to be stretched out to fill empty hours. Inside was a small digital recorder, professional quality but simple to use. "It's for your compositions," May explained. "I noticed you sometimes hum melodies when you're too tired to write them down. This way you can record them and transcribe them later." Lily turned the device over in her hands, clearly pleased. "It's perfect. Thank you." She paused, then added, "I have something for you too." She reached into her bedside drawer and pulled out a thin folder. "I finished it last week, but I wanted to wait until after my treatment to give it to you." May opened the folder to find several pages of staff paper filled with careful notation. The title page read "Lullaby for May" in Lily's neat handwriting. "You wrote this for me?" May asked, genuinely touched. Lily nodded. "It's based on the song you played at the concert. Not the same, but inspired by it, like how your grandma's song inspired you." May scanned the music, humming softly as she read. It was remarkable how much Lily's composition skills had developed in just 6 months. The piece had a maturity that belied the composer's young age. Echoes of the folk melody, but transformed through Lily's unique perspective. There were challenging passages that showed Lily had been practicing diligently, and quiet moments of surprising emotional depth. "This is beautiful," May said, meaning every word. "May I play it sometime?" "That's why I wrote it. I want you to play it at your next concert." May nodded, unable to speak for a moment past the lump in her throat. They spent the next hour talking about Lily's plans for when she returned home. She would go back to regular school in the fall, hopefully without needing any special accommodations. Her parents had promised a real piano for her bedroom, not just a keyboard if her health continued to improve. And she wanted to start a music club for other kids who had been seriously ill. "Music helped me be brave," she said simply. "Maybe it could help other kids too." As May prepared to leave, promising to return for Lily's graduation from the hospital on Tuesday, the girl asked a question that caught her off guard. "Will you still be my teacher after I go home? I know you're busy and my house is probably far from your studio, but I don't want a different teacher." May had been wondering the same thing, unsure if their bond would naturally fade once Lily returned to normal life. The thought left an unexpected emptiness. "If you want lessons with me, we'll make it work," May assured her. "Your house is only across town. And besides," she added with a smile, "I have a reputation to protect. When you become a famous composer someday, I want everyone to know I was your teacher." Lily laughed, a sound that had become more frequent in recent weeks. "Deal." Driving home that evening, May found herself taking a detour, turning toward the cemetery where her grandmother was buried. She hadn't visited in months, not since before the charity concert. It felt important somehow to come here today, to close a circle. The cemetery was quiet in the early evening light. May found the familiar headstone and knelt to clear away some fallen leaves, tracing the engraved characters of her grandmother's name. "I wish you could have met Lily," she said softly. "You would have loved her. She has your stubbornness." A gentle breeze rustled through nearby trees carrying the scent of blooming flowers. "Your lullaby changed everything," May continued. "For me, for her. It's strange how things connect, isn't it? You sang it to me when I was small. I played it for a sick little girl. Now she's written her own lullaby for me." She placed the small bouquet of daisies she had brought against the stone. "I'm teaching again. Really teaching, not just going through the motions. And playing too, though not the way you might have expected. Not big concert halls, but it feels right." As she drove home in the gathering dusk, May's mind drifted back to the night of the charity concert, the moment when the final note had hung in the air. The look on Lily's face, the connection that had formed between them through music. Professor Abernathy had called the next day, full of praise and barely contained excitement. "What you did on that stage," he had said, "was better than any technical performance I've ever heard from you." That was music, May. Real music. He had wanted to discuss possibilities, other charity events, small recitals, perhaps even teaching master classes at the university. May had been cautious at first, unwilling to commit to anything that might reawaken old pressures and fears. But in the months since, she had found a new path forward. Not a return to her old life as a prodigy with all its expectations, but something more authentic. She played now not to impress but to connect, taught not to produce perfect technicians, but to help others find their own musical voice. And once a week, she visited the Children's Hospital to run the music therapy program she had helped create with the charity funds. She brought small keyboards and simple percussion instruments, taught basic notation to children who might never leave the hospital, helped them express through music what they couldn't say in words, their fear, their hope, their determination. Back in her apartment, May sat at her piano with Lily's composition. She played through it slowly, feeling the echoes of her grandmother's lullaby transformed through this young girl's perspective. The piece ended with a gentle, rising phrase that seemed to hang in the air with a question mark, not quite resolved, open to possibility, like Lily's future. Like her own, May played the ending again, then improvised a response, a gentle answering phrase that completed the musical thought while honoring its original intent. She jotted down the notes, thinking she would show them to Lily as a suggestion, not a correction. Teacher and student, mentor and protege, but also something more. Two musicians separated by decades of age and experience, yet connected by the universal language they both spoke fluently. Outside her window, the city settled into evening routines. Lights came on in neighboring apartments. A siren wailed briefly in the distance. Life continued its complex symphony. And May Lynn, once a prodigy, then a teacher, now something she didn't quite have a name for yet, played on into the gathering darkness. Not practicing, not performing, simply playing. For herself, for Lily, for her grandmother, for the pure joy of making music that spoke truth.